brings you to make a single cut where you make a cut? What elements are operating? Is it all rhythm? Is it just pieces, end of the scene? What makes you make the cut where you make a cut?
Well, first of all, I would say the rhythm of the scene that you're doing, so the performances create rhythms too. Also, the camera work may create a rhythm. So and the blocking creates a rhythm. So there's three things right there. Plus, it seems to me your cut is often going to be predicated on what the next cut is. What's your in? Your out and your in are going to be working together, whether it's an overlap or a jump, whether it's meant to be a shot cut or whether it's meant to be an invisible edit. And then these things are decided. How are they decided? I mean, you could intellectualize it, but I think instinctual is actually the reality. You feel it. You feel it.
Do you cut in a stop motion, or do you cut actually flowing and go, boom, there's the feel, or do you stop picture and go, yeah, I'm going to do it right there?
You mean, do you stop it on a dime?
I mean, some people, I think, cut with the flowing and boom, there's the cut, and when it's rolling, and other people will go.
You mean they'll just go bam and make a mark while they're going? Oh,
Yeah,
well,
so I'm curious if you do
thing.
both. Which one?
Well, all I can say is when I used to cut on the Moviola, we had a break. I wore out more
And then
break
go back
pads.
5, and then figure out what your reaction time was and go back 5 frames.
Sometimes,
That's what
but
we-
then you'd have to look at the cut and see if that was correct.
Right, but
I used to break, there was a rubber coupling, and I used to
Yeah.
break that thing all the time, usually on a Friday night or a Saturday. I finally had to learn how to replace it myself.
you need to cut when you don't have anything more to see and when you need to be somewhere else. And I think it's, every shot shows something different. If you, certainly reaction shots, I mean, that's the obvious. When you have kind of lost track of one of the characters or something that you feel you have to get back to them. But also when you want to define the space, or you want to back up for some reason emotionally, you want to be too, close and everything. So it's really when you're tired of this scene.
Mm-hmm.
I think the moment you make the cut is intuitive. I think you're also addressing the choice.
Yeah, yeah. You want to go to a different angle.
Right.
It's basically.
And it's basically what I want to see.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
Right. I mean, I think it's about being in the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also having an intuitive sense of what the audience wants. Now, I always cut with the sense of the audience, this invisible audience out there who, I don't know who they are, but I think a lot of the choices are about what do I want to show them or what do I not want to show them. It's like, when do I not want to cut to something? Because that creates a desire that has a different kind of effect. I mean, there's a million reasons why you cut, and it's all very specific to the kind of scene and the kind of effect that you want to produce in somebody's mind. What's their expectation? If this person says a particular line to somebody else, does that merit a reaction? Are they going to want to see how the other person feels about that? Is that the right place to be? So it's about giving information or withholding information, depending on what you think the circumstance calls for, I guess.
I feel so selfish. I'm always cutting for what I want to see.
Well, but the thing is, ultimately you are the audience, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Derek, how is it different in reality? Because aren't there factors about, producers wanting to cut just for the sake of cut because they think faster pacing, is required to hold viewers' attention?
No, storytelling's still the same.
Coming from that, and I think you already answered that question, Derek, in that the producers doing the string outs have to stay with the truth of the story.
No, they don't.
Okay. That's what I was wondering. What kind of percentage? I mean, how much is contrived and how much is sort of genuine of the moment? That they're sort of reconstructing the moment, or rather
really
than
depends on the
tell a
show.
story to get
Look
to a
in that
certain
camera.
point within that moment.
It really depends on the show, the producers of the show. I mean, some are better than others. Some are more truthful than others.
And I don't think he's going to tell you which one.
No.
But you could probably
It's
figure it
not
out.
about telling the truth, it's about entertaining.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm going to ask my standard 3D question. Since there are people at home, do you have any observations you'd like to share on this new technology and what it's going to do to your workflow and other choices you're going to be making?
Has anybody here cut anything 3D?
Well, I've done a conversion, and I've worked a little on native 3D at Sony's editing workshop, 3D workshop. 3D is nothing, it's not even new, but the new technologies have made it better if it's done correctly. One of the biggest problems, I think, is that audiences have been faced with a whole lot of very fast, cheap conversions that just don't work very well. Nobody wants to see a movie that's so dim you can't see it, or where the heads, you can almost see two bodies like superimposed on each other. That's bad. You know, you can only make that profit so many times before the audience knows that it's getting ripped off and doesn't show up. So that's why there's been a backlash to 3D. I think it's a great tool. If it's used properly, it's going to get more refined. You know, in fact, I think a lot of people are thinking that the home 3D experience might be more intense and more profitable and popular than the cinema 3D experience. However, visionary filmmakers like James Cameron and others are going to be experimenting with even more upscale 3D effects and higher frame rates as well, to give you the combination of which will give us unprecedented reality or intensity of a cinema image, which I think is important if we're going to keep the theatrical experience alive to begin with. Because as you probably all know, box office has been flat and down, and it's had a big effect on movie making. I mean, they're making less pictures, for one thing. When they figure out a way to do 3D without glasses, and that day will come, that's going to be a revolutionary thing. So I think it's here to stay, and what it means for the editor is it's not enough now that we have sound effects and music and coloring and comps and visual effects to deal with. Now we're going to have the opportunity to adjust and enhance or detract if we don't know what we're doing. We can manipulate the effects on 3D, and we can do it in the new Avid version 6. Gives us the ability to do just that. But, you know, we still have to make the picture work dramatically and coherently and narratively. And we're going to have to add more hours to our capabilities, because there's only 24 hours in a day.
And a new set of skills, because it changes the way you edit and construct something because of the way your eye shifts between cuts. You know, when you're cutting flat, you can get away with a lot of fast cuts, and you change in depth of field and stuff like that, and your retina doesn't have to then adjust. So
It's very restrictive in some ways. There's a lot of rules around 3D.
yeah, and it's hard to do well. You know, it is actually a hard thing, because the directors also really have to understand it when they're shooting it, and they have to compose things in a way that lends itself to good 3D. So it's very complicated.
And it's also interesting. I saw something that was originally made for the small screen, and then it was shown in an IMAX theater. Didn't work. I mean, it was
probably too many close-ups.
It was a lot of diagonal, fast movement. On the small screen doesn't make you sick. On the big screen, makes you sick. So
You said that sometimes when you read a script, you can see certain problems in the script, you know, that are going to be coming up, even though you haven't seen the film or the video yet. When you see something like that, where maybe the editing is really going to save it, or you have to address that problem. What is the problem, and how do you address it?
Well, you know, there's lots of different types of problems that you can encounter in a script. So, you know, there's structural things, there's logic things.
Would this character actually do that, or is this like antithetical?
Motivational things. I mean, and I think, you know, that starts with me, sort of the English major, sort of analytical side of me, sort of just analyzing the text and analyzing the construction of the story. Usually what you do is I approach the director and I go, how do you envision this? What do you think, you know, I perceive a problem here, you know, and I just want to call your attention to it before you shoot it. What are you thinking? And maybe you talk through it with them, and you arrive at something.
It's a fast-paced thing, and sometimes the start date is here, the script is not really ready, but it will be, it has to be, or at least the first scene has to be, by that date. You know, sometimes there's new pages written every day. How that can impact the whole piece remains to be seen. I think studying the text, somebody should be doing it, and who better than the editor, who's ultimately going to be responsible for making it work anyway. So yeah, for example, some scenes just don't belong in a movie, but there they are. You know it's going to stall everything, and it'll lift right out, and you don't need it. And why spend money and time on it when you can spend those resources on something that's going to work? So that happens a lot. You find things, you know, we always cut scenes out of movies anyway. Wouldn't it be great to not shoot them at all if you could figure it out? So somebody has to make that decision. And if there's a good argument for it, let's do it. By the way, another thing that's always an issue I find on movies are transitions. That somebody, we're going to shoot this scene today and we'll shoot that scene next week, and nobody bothers to figure out how you're going to go from the last shot of one scene to the next shot of another and know where you are, if you need to know where you are. Maybe you don't. So it's good to figure these things out in advance so we don't have to go and make them up later or go out and shoot stuff.
Have you ever gotten film where you saw something missing and you had to patch it?
Well, yeah, you have to patch it, but maybe you just go and shoot it. But it's better to shoot it when you still have the set standing. That's another reason why we have to be editing quickly. Because you got to look at this stuff quickly. In fact, we're the first ones to look at it and say, you missed the close-up of the most important line of dialogue. Oh. Or we're cutting to the firehouse, but we don't know we're in a firehouse because we're just in a room. And sometimes a transition can be a beautiful thing. I mean, if it's thought about.
My favorite add to that is that when after they've done shooting, they have a female blackjack dealer, and they need a close-up of the cards being dealt, and they use the prop master to do it. It was a guy. He was in his 50s.
Oh, really?
And no one noticed it until we looked at the cut and went, wait a minute, those are 50-year-old men's hands. Those weren't working. And I wanted to ask all of you if maybe you've been involved in any previs on stuff you've been working on. And if you do want to work on previs, if you want to be involved in previs or...
The good news is that on effects-driven pictures today, previs is pretty normal. And there's a lot of companies that specialize just in doing that. Like on Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I came on about 3.5 weeks before principal photography. And the reason was they realized previs is kind of like a low-res animation of what the final scene will look like. And it's very important because, for one thing, you can make sure that the scene plays dramatically without making it so long that it has no focus. You can figure out by the manipulation of these shots. It's a process. They give you shots, then you say, well, I need this close-up here. I need a close-up of this ape here. I need a close-up of this patrolman here. Now the apes are supposed to do something. They climb. Some of the apes go up the top of the bridge. The orangutans go below. And you have to establish that they're breaking apart and they're being given orders. You have to establish the story. And you have to do this within a budget. You've heard about these runaway visual effects movies that go millions and millions and millions of dollars over. Well, if you know precisely what you're going to shoot, that shouldn't happen. So it's like building a house. You don't want to have a house that you're making up as you go. You kind of want to have a blueprint so you know there's a foundation and that it's all going to work. And that you're kind of within budget, although building a house is never in budget, I guess.
Yeah, that's a bad comparison.
But that's the point. And the studio wants to know that they can make this scene. Otherwise, they're going to start saying, well, you got too many shots. Now, when every shot of your characters is going to cost you $60,000 a piece to make, you better make those shots count.
My question is, everyone talks about rhythm, and obviously rhythm is key to the process. I wonder who out of you actually have some musical ability or talent, or in what other ways you might be creative in addition to editorial?
I don't know about talent, but I played drums for 14 years.
Perfect, huh? Yeah.
I see rhythm visually, though. So I don't, it's not so much sound, it's visual. I mean, I would drive my assistants crazy because I would see a scene and go, boom, 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 boom.
I used to play air guitar. And I'll sing in the shower, and if you get me really drunk, I might do a really cool karaoke. Or not, I might.
Oh, afterwards we can get you right.
A little bit of piano growing up, but I'm not a musician. But I know a lot of people who come from music and get into editing and play. So it's a very common thing that you find, editors are musicians as well.
I was producing a show before the next episode of shooting, had a chance to visit with the editor, and just by happenstance asked him, hey, we're getting ready to shoot. Is there anything that you think that we need to get in this next episode? And it proved to be one of the best questions that I could have posed to this editor. And I was just wondering if there's anything that you guys would have as, hey, directors,
shoot this.
Shoot this.
Well, in nonfiction, I can't have enough footage, so cutaways, just shoot. Different angles, different focal lengths.
There's never enough B-roll, isn't that what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reactions.
Yeah, coverage.
Yeah.
And I think we all want a producer that asks that question. That's what we would really want.
Yes.
Because
Totally.
the answer to that question is so specific to the project that you're working on. But too often, you know, you might have an idea about a script or about what coverage you need, and no one asks you, and no one, even if you volunteer the information, necessarily wants to listen to you because, well, you're an editor. What do you know about coverage? What do you know about shooting? What do you know about writing? Which is really, I mean, everyone's here is an editor, and I think we all know about that stuff. But unfortunately, this is a very hierarchical industry that we're in. So we would love to have that dialogue with producers and directors, and we only want to help. And I think editors are very constructive people. You know, we don't just criticize something. We want to try to give a solution. So, you know, the more that when that happens on a show or a movie, it's better as a result of it.
Always. And you know, you don't have to take any of this advice. That's the good news.
Well, thank our panelists once again, and thank you.